Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go ahead and get started. So if I can ask the folks at the vendors tables to please find your seat. Okay, folks, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is David Glick. I work for our Department of Communications here. Everyone here in attendance for making time in your busy schedules to come on out to City of Hope for tonight's Ask the Experts, Diabetes and Stress, What You Need to Know. So before we begin the program, just a couple of housekeeping items. And the first one is really important. It's about the restrooms. If you folks need to use the restrooms, right outside this back door here, across the breezeway into the next building, off to the right. There are signs so you can't miss it. If you folks have your cell phones or pagers, if you can go ahead and silence those, that'd be great. One thing that's very important here at City of Hope for me to remind you, we are a non-smoking campus. There's a pager, I heard it. And at the end of the tables, on the inside of the rows here, we have little note cards for question and answers. So if you guys have any questions, you can ask someone at the end here to pass it down. You can write down your questions, and we'll have a question and answer period towards the end of the program. And also the little information packets that we have, the yellow sheets of paper, those are our surveys. We ask you to please take a couple minutes and fill those out. They're very important to us, help us to understand what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong and how we can improve the programs. I'd greatly appreciate that as well. I don't put this program on by myself. I'd like to thank Becky Andrews in the back here, and up in the sound booth, Robert Zapatero and Matthew Stringer for helping us to stream this live on YouTube. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce tonight's Ask the Expert guest speakers. I'll read both bios first before I make the introduction. Our first speaker tonight is Dr. Jinsun Choi. She's currently a clinical fellow in the Department of Clinical Diabetes, Endocrinology, and Metabolism. Her interest is in medical management of diabetes. Dr. Choi received her Bachelor of Science and Bachelor of Arts degrees from UCLA in Molecular Cell Development Biology and Spanish Literature. She received her medical degree from UC Irvine School of Medicine in 2008. Dr. Choi completed her internship and residency at Cedar Medical Center in the Department of Internal Medicine from 2008 to 2011. Our second speaker for the evening is Dr. Randi McAllister. She's been at City of Hope since 1989 under the Department of Pediatrics. Dr. McAllister is a licensed clinical psychologist and has provided psychological services for pediatric patients with diabetes, cancer, sickle cell disease, and hemophilia, and adult patients with cancer and diabetes. Dr. McAllister has been a professor in City of Hope's Department of Supportive Care Medicine since 2012. She is currently the Psychologist for Survivorship Program and is leading a new monthly diabetes support group. Dr. McAllister has taught patients and staff stress management skills, and she utilizes art and sand tray therapy in her work. So all that said, won't you please help me welcome our first speaker, Dr. Jinsun Choi.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for the nice introduction. So today the topic is regarding stress and diabetes. And when I was given this topic, it was really a big, daunting task because part of it is because there's so much information out there. You can just Google information and you get. And to tell you the truth, some of it is true, but all it's not. Having this opportunity to speak with this audience and trying to come up with the ideas and the concepts that are the most important regarding stress and diabetes and trying to relay that message to you, it was a daunting task. However, I'll try to focus on the basis, and if you have further questions, please ask them after our presentation. So and there's a lot of science emerging each and every day regarding stress and diabetes. And we can really, first of all, I want to point out that diabetes is really a very common problem that we see nowadays, especially with emerging rise of obesity as an epidemic. We have seen a really huge number of diabetic patients each and every year. And the American Diabetes Association has come up with some numbers for us. And they've described that million Americans, children and adults, have the diagnosis of diabetes. So that's approximately 8.3% of the population. So there's about 100 people in this room. So approximately 8 or 9 people in this room have diabetes. But also, the rest, 92% of us have someone that we love, a family member, or spouse, or children, or some other friends that are also suffering from this disease. The more concerning number is the fact that 79 million Americans have prediabetes. And what that means is that if you have prediabetes and if you don't make any changes in your lifestyle, that means that within the first few years or a few next years, you are going to become diabetic. And the scarier number, I think, for me is the fact that just in the year 2010 alone, 1.9 million new cases of diabetes were diagnosed. So, and the actual incidence in terms of the new case of diabetes is increasing steadily as the years go by. So now the question that we want to address today is really to try to see this relationship between stress and diabetes. And people who are diagnosed with diabetes, that in itself can cause a lot of stress. As you can imagine, people in this audience who have diabetes might tell us the same thing. But having the diagnosis of diabetes, now you really have to make huge changes in your lifestyle. You have to think about the type of food that you're eating. You have to think about incorporating exercise in your life. There's so many changes that you need to do for yourself as well as for your family that really becomes a very stressful disease. It causes a lot of stress. But also, as you can see, a lot of patients that I've seen in clinics, they tell me that it was actually the stress that causes diabetes. They were at work and they had certain deadline, or a family member got ill, or XYZ, all these other things that can cause stress. Because of that stressful event, subsequently they were diagnosed with diabetes. When they were going through that process, they started noticing signs of having high blood sugar, so they were getting more thirsty, they were feeling hungrier, or noticing some weight loss, and those are all beginning signs of diabetes. So as you can see, they really go hand in hand in terms of the diabetes and stress. So how does diabetes really occur? So the first thing I want to mention is that diabetes occurs because the body doesn't produce enough insulin. So insulin is a hormone that is secreted from our pancreas, and it helps to lower the blood sugar in our blood system. So what happens is that when there's a lot of sugar, the insulin is there. Therefore, the insulin helps to get rid of the sugar and put it back into our cells. And when there is no insulin, then the blood contains higher number of glucose molecules. And also, diabetes can occur because the cells, for some reason, there are many different reasons behind this, but also the cells tend to ignore the fact that the insulin is there. And that's what we call insulin resistance. meaning the blood sugar is high, and this insulin was secreted for the pancreas, but for some reason the cells, they don't react, they're not aware that the insulin is there. So therefore, the blood sugar remains elevated in our blood system. So, and why does diabetes mellitus occur? Just like with any other disease, a large portion of it has to do with our genetics. So the way, our parents, our ancestors, if they had certain genes, we're more predisposed of developing diabetes compared to someone who didn't have that set of, genes or DNA. And also there's a lot of environmental factors, as you could probably imagine. The type of food that we eat, the type of exercise, or I guess I should say the lack of exercise, and also stress, which is the main topic for today. So the thing that I want to emphasize is that stress is just as an important factor as food and exercise, and it's something that we really don't look into it that deeply when we're first diagnosed with diabetes or prediabetes. And I think part of it is because stress is just not something that's very tangible. We can't really see. I mean, we definitely feel it. We're feeling the effects of the stress, but there's no clear way of measuring it. So it becomes difficult for us to assess, self-assess, or someone else to tell us that, you are under a lot of stress or not. And also, I guess part of it is also that us as physicians, we don't emphasize on the fact that stress plays such a big role in a human body. So I think that's something that us as physicians, we need to focus more so that we ask patients to try to relax and to try to really deal and manage the stress. And this is not something, anything new, but stress comes in a variety of forms. As you can imagine, it comes from there's physical stress, meaning, you're going through an illness or you just had a surgery. We were running away from predators that were trying to kill us, and also we were going and fighting to get the food that we needed. So because of this fight or flight response, our body really had to adapt to quick bursts of energy and to try to deal with that stressful event. So, you all of a sudden start, you see a lion or a big elephant or mammoth, and you have to run away, and you need that burst of energy to really get away from that situation. So the question is, how does our body really start responding to that event? How does it really start? Just like anything else in our human body, everything starts from our brain. So if you think about it, it's really our own perception of what is stress or what is not comes really from our own decision of what we think it is. So the same event, on some people might be considered as a mundane, common event, but for some other people, it might be a really stressful event. So it depends on, our background, cultural background. It depends on our previous experiences, as well as psychological factors that play a role into decides for something to be stressful or not. And so it all starts from the brain, and from the brain on, there's a cascade of events that are stressful gets passed down, and we're secreting all these hormones, stress hormones, that make us react in a certain way. And when this adrenaline or catecholamines are released, there's an increase in heart rate, there's increase in blood pressure, there's an elevation in our blood sugars, our bronchioles, they dilate. So these are all responses that we need to run away from the predator. A little bit more slower response that also occur in our body is that it's on this side, on the right side of the diagram, is that when the stress hits, there's certain area called hypothalamus that secretes hormones or messages to the pituitary gland, which is also part of our brain. And within that, there's other cascade of events, other hormones that get released. And at the end point is that it also goes to the adrenal gland, which is the gland that's above our kidneys. And in the outer area of the adrenal gland, there are hormones that get released because of this interaction of events. And some of the hormones that are mostly known is, I guess we could call them glucocorticoid, but the easier term that you might be familiar with is the one called cortisol. So these are all things that happen. And as you can see, either there's the quick response or the more slower response, that that's one of the stress hormones that also gets released, and that causes further increase in the blood sugar. So I'm sure most people might have heard the term cortisol. How many of you have heard that word in the past? Yeah, I see. Yeah, that really, as I already mentioned, it's a stress hormone that is produced in the adrenal gland. And what it does, it influences the breakdown of carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins. So that way you can provide energy, which quote unquote is the blood sugar, to the rest of the body that needs the quick energy at that time. So, but also in order, so it breaks down all this carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins. But on the other hand, it also causes what we call visceral fat, especially when the cortisol level remains high. The fat, all that energy to get restored, redistributed in a different way, it ends up mostly in the central abdominal area. So a little bit about cortisol is that it is secreted in a circadian rhythm, which means early in the morning it has its peak, and then throughout the day it goes down. So this is our natural response. So what happens is that I'm sure some of you who have diabetes have noticed that they check their blood sugar at night before they go to bed, and it could be anywhere in a good range of like 110, 120, 150. But then the next morning when they wake up, they see the blood sugars in the 180s or 200s, and they're going, "What happened? I didn't eat anything throughout the whole night." But still the blood sugar goes up, and part of the reason is because all the interaction of different hormones, and one of them is called cortisol. When the cortisol level is high, also your blood sugar is going to be high. So during times of stress, there's additional amount of cortisol that gets released from our adrenal gland. So as you can see, instead of having this normal, physiologic rise and then decrease, when we're constantly stressed, it's gonna be a flat line. It's gonna have a little zigzag, but it'll be much higher than what our normal body does. So therefore, our blood sugar will remain elevated. Probably some of you might have experienced if you're in the hospital, or if you're ill, you just had a common cold or some infection, your blood sugar is probably going to be much higher, and that's because our body is under stress. And same thing, if you're having an emotional stress or work-related stress, your blood sugar is also going to be high. And it's all because of the interaction of different hormones that causes persistently elevated level cortisol, causing the rise in the sugar. So one of the myths that is out there on the internet is that, does cortisol make you fat? I'm sure some of you might have heard that in the past. And the easy answer to this that I want to say is that no, it doesn't. So as I mentioned, the cortisol really increases the breakdown of the protein, the fat, and the carbohydrate in our body. So in theory, if you think, well, if it helps to break down all this energy to use during stressful event, how come we end up getting some central adiposity, and how come we don't end up losing weight when we're stressed? Well, part of the reason is because, as I mentioned, the cortisol also helps to redistribute some of the energy that is in our system, and it has this tendency to put it back into our central abdominal area. So when there's a lot of energy left in our system, all that energy gets stored back into the central area. So if you think of it going back to the hunters and gatherers example, is that back in those days when we're running away, when there's a stressful event, what happens is that we run until we're able to hunt something or we're able to get away from the danger. But nowadays, what do we really do when we're under stress? We don't really run. What we do is we sit in our couch, we turn on the TV, we watch the show, comedy show or something to relax, and also we end up eating, popcorns and chips or something, some, food that makes us feel more relaxed. And so what ends up happening is that we're not really using the energy like our body was intended to, but we're just consuming more energy. and therefore all that excess energy gets stored back into our body, causing us to gain weight. So another thing that I want to mention about cortisol is that it has an immunosuppressive effect, which means that our immune system doesn't work as well as it should be. So it plays a role in regulation of immune system as well as inflammatory process. So some of you might know we had our white blood cells in our body, such as the neutrophils, the lymphocytes, the macrophages, and all those things. All those cells help fight infections. But when the cortisol level is high, all that interaction between the cells is not optimal. So those fighting cells are the defenders of our body from viruses and bacteria is not able to work the way it should. And to make things worse, is that people who have diabetes, your blood sugar is going to be high when you're stressed because of the cortisol and all the different hormones. But also, having the high blood sugar, it impairs further the function of your blood cells, of your white blood cells. So it's kind of like a double bang. Your cortisol's high, so it's not working well, your defender cells, but as well as your blood sugar is high, so the cells are not able to interact that well with each other. That's why people who have diabetes, if they get infection, it's much, much harder for them to get better and to cure from the infection. So now the question that some of you might have is that, can stress cause diabetes? I think I already addressed this question a little bit, but there are definitely studies that show that there is link between those two. So people who have had stressful experiences, they say that they have an onset of diabetes. And these people, usually they already have several predisposing factors that probably would lead them into the disease, meaning they already had a genetic factor, or they already, the food that they were eating was not good, or, they were already obese and things like that. So, but having the stressful event really turned on the onset of being diagnosed with diabetes. And in particular, the research shows that people who have lost their family members, or people who are under a lot of stress at work, they tend to state that they develop diabetes a little bit quicker. So those are some of the things that have been studied. So we can theorize that, probably family loss, it could be that, it's such a huge stressful event that our body, our hormones, our body system just kind of goes into a very stressful mode. And also regarding work, is because at work, we're in this constant stress. It doesn't go away. So that perpetual stress that we experience at work is probably contributing to the onset of the diabetes. So this is a cute little picture that I found, and I'm sure a lot of us could relate to this, is that when we're at work, we're so tired that all we think about is about going to sleep. And we're actually in bed at our home, we're so worried about work that really we can't really sleep at all. And so we experience this often, and the same thing goes for students, when they have tests, they can't really sleep, or they have a deadline, or any stress really can really make us have insomnia. So studies have shown that people who have insomnia, lack of sleep, they also tend to have a higher levels of cortisol in their system. So that is playing a role into the development of diabetes. People also have done studies that show that people who are in the hospital setting, who are admitted to the hospital, especially in the ICU setting, the cortisol level doesn't have that nice circadian rhythm that I show you, but it tends to peak and during the hospitalization. And also, they have a higher rate of developing type 1 diabetes. As you know, type 1 diabetes is the one that you definitely don't have any insulin resource. So, and there's a lot of theories behind it, and what they call autoimmune disease. But also that seems to be present in kids that had very stressful experiences early on in their life. Some other studies also show that doing certain problems like arithmetic, solving problems, or very unpleasant interview experiences, it can cause destabilization of the blood glucose for at least for a few hours. So that goes back to what I show you, all those catecholamines, all this the adrenaline rush, and the cortisol level play a role in causing higher blood sugars on people who, who don't have diabetes. So that's also something that has been seen in research studies. There's one study that was done, it was a prospective study, and it was done on type 1 diabetic patients. And they followed them for over a year. And what they did is that they met once in a while, I think every month or so, and they asked them a lot of questions and asked them whether they had any negative stress or positive stress. And along with all those questions, they also checked their blood tests for A1C. And A1C is a measurement that tells us how high the blood sugar level has been in your body for an average of 3 months. So what the results show is that people who had worsening control of the diabetes reported having more negative experiences. And people who had improvement in their diabetes control had more positive stress events. So by positive stress events, they're referring to things like giving birth to a child, getting engaged, getting promoted at work. Those are also all stressful events that happen, but they're positive. So it's shown that all those positive stressful events can also help improve. It's shown that those experiences seem to be related to improvement in the blood glucose control. So once again, how diabetes causes stress. But more than anything, I think this last bullet point, fear of future, I think that's what causes most stress for our diabetic patients, is that you don't know, having this illness, what it means in 5, 10, 20 years from now. So you know about people who have had diabetes, the complications that might occur with this disease, such as, knocking on wood, limb amputations, developing stroke, heart attack, needing dialysis, things like that. Those are all things that are very scary for anyone, but also, but it's part of something that we have to deal with as a patient who has diabetes. It's very stressful disease because it's something that you really can't get rid of, and it's something that you have to deal with for the rest of your life. But also, as you have already, as I already discussed, stress can really impair our way of controlling diabetes and being able to really fight and manage this disease. So stress can really deteriorate our control of diabetes. So as you can see, it's a circle, and it's a vicious cycle. And the way to control this is that we really, as I mentioned, we can't really get rid of the diabetes, so we need to make good management of our stress levels. So in order to do that, we need to manage our stress, and various people have different ways of managing their stress levels. But things that have shown to be helpful is that having a really good social support, either your family, your friends, or we provide diabetes classes here and group support here as well. And having that community, having that someone that understands.
At City of Hope 5 years ago, and they saved my life, which is why I'm not dead or drooling in a cup somewhere. I'm standing up here. But I chose not to give any talks for 5 years because I was just trying to feel like I'm alive again. I had to learn how to drive my car again and so forth. So bear with me. I feel stressed. I feel stressed just standing up here. Okay, so if we say, well, what is stress? And everybody has it. And Hans Selye, you may have heard of his name before, very famous researcher, said the absence of stress is death. I don't like those choices. Is that the only choice that we have? We're either going to be stressed out or we're one of the two. Well, a lot of things happen when we're stressed out, and Dr. Choi went over some of this, so I'm not going to go into all the medical part of it, and when you have your medical questions about it later, you're going to ask her. But just so you know that when you react to stress, lots of different things that are very real happen in your body. It's called the fight or flight syndrome. The good news is that there's something called the relaxation response, which is the opposite of the stress response, and we can learn how to access that on a regular basis. But before we learn that, let's get ourselves more stressed out and look at some of the symptoms. There's something called burnout. There's 3 stages of burnout. Before you get to stage 3 burnout, you have, something's happening here. I'm not sure what just happened. Robert, where are you? Okay, let's go to stress arousal, next page. Okay, there we go. The first stage is stress arousal, and if you have any 2, please go back, what's happening? There we go. Any 2, you're in the first stage of burnout. And if this happens over a long period of time, what happens is you get to stage 3 when you're really critically ill. So understanding that having persistent irritability, anxiety, being forgetful, not sleeping well, can't concentrate, having a lot of headaches, all those kinds of things of being in stage 1 of stress arousal. So now, Robert, are you doing this for me or should I do it? We're going to go to some stress words. When you ask people about being stressed, I'm not sure why this is stressing me out. I don't know what's happening. I had my secretary type them in a way that would sort of show us what they are. But people say things like, I'm stressed out. Or people say, I'm just so exhausted all the time. I'm always tired. Or feeling conflicted or tense all the time. Maybe you have your own words. What are some of the words that you use when you're stressed? Shout them out. Say again? Overwhelmed. What else? Say it again. I'm stressed. I'm overwhelmed. What else? I'm from the South, and people say, you are the aggravatingest child I have ever seen. They're aggravated. I don't know if you've ever heard that before, but that's how I grew up. You are the aggravatingest child. So some people say, I'm just so aggravated. Everybody's getting on my nerves, that kind of stuff. Or sometimes people just go like this, and they take a big breath. Have you ever done that? You're kind of having a bad day and things are really getting on your nerves, and all of a sudden you just go, it's like your body knows that you need to relax. So let me press the button myself. It worked. So the relaxation response, and we're going to practice it in just a second here. Go back. Uh-oh, that's way ahead. Okay, there we go. Meditation, relaxation training, deep breathing can help us deal with the stress response. And I'm so stressed out from this, I think we ought to do it right now. I just practiced this with one of my patients in session before I came over here tonight, and this person was very agitated, and I said, let's do some deep breathing. I have to go give a talk, and I'm stressed, and clearly you're agitated, so let's breathe together. So we did about a 10-minute breathing exercise, and when we opened our eyes, we both said, the room looks a little different. It's more peaceful in here, isn't it? It was nicer. It was good. It helped me get over here. Okay? So how many of you already do some form of meditation? For those of you who already do, like the visualization, for those of you who don't, what you can learn is that you have the power to turn off the stress building, gave me a room, and I recorded myself and made a CD. We have some of those CDs here tonight that if you think you want one, you're very welcome to please take it. It's me talking you through a guided deep relaxation exercise. It's about 25, 30 minutes long. We're not going to do a 30-minute one right now. I'm going to show you how in just a few minutes you can feel better. And if you practice this for 20 or 30 minutes every day, you would feel a lot better. I guarantee it. So the first thing we're going to do, I'm going to come down here because I like to walk around when I do this. I'm not going to be staring at you to see if you're relaxing. I might be closing my eyes through part of it because it relaxes me to do this, even if I have to think about what I'm going to say next. So you don't have to worry that I'm checking you out or anything. The first thing that we're going to do is just look around the room and look at everything in here and realize this is where we are. Because what we're going to do in a minute is we're going to close our eyes and we're going to let go of all the external things and focus on internal things. Go from external to internal. So you notice that the carpet is gray. You're sitting at a table that's light gray. The air conditioning feels pretty good in here. There's some green boards over there. There's some lights. There's people sitting next to you and so on. So what we're going to do, now that we know where we are in the Cooper building, we're going to close our eyes and we're going to take some deep breaths, and I'll guide you through this. If you don't want to close your eyes, find a spot on the carpet to just let your eyes rest on that spot. You're not checking it for lint, okay? L-I-N-T, not L-E-N-T. You're not checking it for lint or anything. You're just finding a place for your eyes to rest. So for those of you who don't want to close your eyes, just find a spot a few feet in front of you on the carpet where you can just let your eyeballs rest on that spot, okay? So what we're going to do right now is take a deep breath in. And when you take a deep breath in, what you might notice is that your diaphragm expands, and when you breathe out, it goes back down again. Most of us are breathing very shallow right here a lot of the time. We don't even know what a deep breath is. Remember a few minutes ago when I said sometimes you're so stressed out you just kind of go all of a sudden. You take a big deep breath. Your body needed that. But we breathe in a very shallow way most of the time. So breathing deep, if you're not sure where your diaphragm is, just put your hand on your belly right here. And what you're going to notice as you start to breathe deep is your belly is going to rise and fall. And keeping your hand there can kind of help cue you as to what your body is doing. So find that spot on the carpet or close your eyes. And we're going to let go of sounds. The air conditioning is running, the colors in the room. And we're going to pay attention to how it feels when we bring the air in through the nose and mouth. It goes into the lungs, the diaphragm expands, and we breathe it out again. So we're going from external, what color is your neighbor's shoes? I don't know, to internal. Feeling the diaphragm easily going up and down as you breathe. Now you can't stop yourself from thinking. So one of the distractions is your own thoughts. Your thoughts might be, oh, I forgot to pay the electric bill. I need to stop at Trader Joe's on the way home. I wonder if my son did his homework. You know, there's all these different thoughts that go through your mind. Those are distractions. So when they come up, we simply take another breath in, and when we breathe out, we just let the distractions go out there into the universe somewhere. We don't have to hold on to them if we're choosing the relaxation response. So we choose not to hold on to those thoughts, and we choose to refocus our attention on the breathing and letting the body relax. And when we do deep breathing like this, research shows us that the entire body can relax. And it's like taking a very short vacation for a few minutes to do this. So I'm going to guide us now through this. We're breathing in, breathing out, and feeling the diaphragm rising and falling. And as you take the next deep breath in, imagine that you're breathing relaxation all the way down into your feet. Your feet might become kind of warm and heavy and relaxed and comfortable. Just let your feet completely. And as you breathe out tension, tiredness, stress. Just breathe all that out into the universe somewhere. So the feet are becoming warm and heavy and comfortable as you breathe out the stress and the tiredness and the tension. Good. Now on the next breath in, imagine that you can breathe the relaxation all the way down into your legs, from your hips, through your thighs, through the knees, through the calf muscles and the shin bones, letting the relaxation cover the entire leg from the hips all the way down to the ankles. Feeling the legs become very warm and comfortable and relaxed. You can feel the chair underneath you. It's doing all the work of holding you up. So you can just sink into the chair and just let that relaxation do its good work. Breathing out stress, worries, tension, just letting it go. Already you might feel a little bit better, a little calmer, a little more relaxed than you did before. Keep breathing, feeling that diaphragm rising and falling. And this time imagine that you can breathe relaxation into your entire belly area and your chest, the torso, so that all the internal organs are doing their jobs easily and effortlessly. And as you breathe the relaxation in, you breathe the stress out. And any of those little worries and nagging thoughts that come up, you simply just breathe them out and refocus on the next breath. It's a matter of refocusing your attention over and over again for your good health. And now on the next breath in, allow your whole face to relax. Let the forehead loosen and relax. Let the eyes soften and relax. And feel the jaw muscles loosening and relaxing, so that the whole face is serene and calm and relaxed. And now feel the relaxation spreading your head, spreading through the top of the head, down the back of the head, and down the sides of the head. The whole head feeling more relaxed, the worries gone, the headaches being breathed out, and the head feeling very calm and relaxed. And now picture that relaxation going all the way down your back, muscle by muscle, just letting it spread down the whole back so that the back is becoming more relaxed and calm. And the breathing continues with the diaphragm. And now let that relaxation spread down your arms, from your shoulder joints all the way down the arms into the hands and fingers. Not like a pill that you take that, boom, I now feel so great. But slowly over time, when you practice the relaxation response, you start to find that you handle stress better. Sort of like, this too shall pass. I'm not too worried about that. It's all good. You just start having a little bit different approach to stressful kinds of situations. And you find yourself feeling more peaceful about things and feeling like you're handling things better. So you'll see a cumulative effect of that. Okay, I guess I have to go back up here where this thing doesn't work very well for me. Okay, thank you. Try to press the button. There we go. So these are some of the things that I was just saying about why is the relaxation response good for you. It helps you sleep better, makes you feel calmer, handle change better, and just helps you deal with things better on a daily basis. You find yourself thinking, this is no big deal, I can handle this. Instead of going, oh my God, why does everything always happen to me? It's a big difference. And it feels good to feel like you have more energy and more calm in your life and that your sleep is better. Here we go. There's different ways to help us manage stress. The relaxation response is one really good way. I highly recommend it. But I also recommend other things. If you have a hobby that you really enjoy, that when you do that hobby, you're not worried about other stuff. You're just totally in the zone. You've heard that phrase, being in the zone? When you're in the zone and you're really working on a painting or a sewing project, or if you're a guy and you're out in the garage working on the car, whatever, and it's going well, time just goes by. You don't even know what time it is anymore. So having a hobby, exercise is good for diabetes and it's good for stress management. Having a friend to do something with, going for a walk on the beach is the picture that I found, but just getting together with a friend and being able to share things helps us reduce our stress levels. Laughing, having a little bit of humor, which I'm going to give you in a minute, and music, which I'm going to give you in a minute, also makes a difference. Prayer and meditation make a big difference in a person's life. Some of you may have a prayer rule that you keep all the time. Some of you may only pray when you're stressed. But regular prayer and meditation make a big difference in a person's life in terms of how they handle everyday stress. Where is she? Where's my lady? Robert. So, we're almost to the lady. What I'm going to say is, find something that works for you. And it's supposed to come up. Come on. And stick with it. I can't tell you how many times as a psychologist in the 24 years I've been at City of Hope, I've asked a patient to work on their homework assignment. I give homework of whatever it might be. Maybe it's exercising 3 times a week. Maybe it's listening to the relaxation CD. And they come in and they say, I didn't do my homework. But you're the one who said you wanted to exercise 3 times a week. So people will figure out things that make them feel better and proceed to not do them. Okay? If there's anything I've learned in 24 years, I've learned that. That as human beings, we think we know what helps us and then we don't get the help. So pick something. If you don't like the relaxation response that we just did, you're not, that stuff's not for me. Get a hobby. Find an exercise partner. Meet with your friend on a regular basis. If you have a pastor or a priest, a spiritual advisor, someone that you can really sit and talk about the deeper issues of life with, do that. And before I put my lady up here, I'm going to say one more thing. We have a new support group, Living with Diabetes. It meets the 3rd Wednesday of every month. There's a handout on this on the back table. I lead this group, and I'm trying to get more people to come to it. Okay? The next group is tomorrow, Wednesday, at 4 o'clock in the Biller Center. So please pick up one of these handouts at the back resource table before you leave, and consider coming to a diabetes support group. It's free, it doesn't cost anything, and you have to put up with me for an hour. We use art, we set goals, you get homework in there, your own goals that you want to set. You meet other people and make friends and exchange phone numbers. It's a good time. So please consider that. So here's the last part of my talk tonight.
And when you get the chance, you are the dancing queen, young and sweet, only 17. Dancing queen, feel the beat from the tambourine. You can dance, you can jive, having the time of your life. See that girl, watch that scene, digging the dancing queen. Don't tease you, turn him on, leave him burning and then you're gone. Looking out for another, anyone who do, you're in the mood for a dance. And when you get the chance, you are the dancing queen, young and sweet, only 17.
Guys, for putting up with me.
Do you want to do some questions and answers?
Yeah.
Choi, do you want to come up? We'll do a few question and answer.
Now we're going to ask the hard questions.
Thank you, Dr. Choi and Dr. McAllister. So now we have our question and answer period. So if anyone took the time to write a question out, you can give them to Becky here. See how many we have that way. And if we have additional questions, we can just pass the mic. And I'm not dancing.
Medication question. That's for you.
Okay, so first question that I got says, can you measure cortisol? The answer is yes and no. Well, yes, in the sense that you can measure the cortisol level, but as I mentioned, it has that circadian rhythm. So in the morning tends to be high, and then later on throughout the day, it decreases. So having a measurement of cortisol just by itself at random time doesn't really give us a good idea whether a person is really, quote unquote, stressed or not. And unfortunately, there are a lot of things that affect the level of cortisol. You know, maybe you came into the lab, you were running, you know, you just rushed into the lab, or you recently were ill or something like that. So it affects so much that measuring cortisol itself doesn't really tell us if the person has been persistently stressed or not. So that's the caveat. But there has been actually a new research that was just published, I think a few weeks ago or so, that they were able to measure the cortisol level from their hair scalp. So they got one of the hairs, you know, and they measure the, in theory, the hair continues to grow and the cortisol level, you know, the cortisol amount gets just kind of gradually increases in the. So they have measured that. There's research showing that people who have high measurement of cortisol in their hair, they have a higher risk of developing heart disease and stroke. So that's something new. But whether that's something that we do routinely do, all under investigational studies so far. So that was a good question. Sorry, I can't quite understand. It says, has the medication gotten any better? I know there are proteins, I think, or oh, pros and cons. Okay, are you referring to medications to manage the stress or medications for diabetes? For diabetes, you know, new research is always on the way. You know, there's so many medications. You turn one way and there's like new medication everywhere. And I don't know exactly on or which ones you've tried, but there's the usual medication, you know, that most diabetic patients are, which is insulin, if their diabetes has been progressing for a long time, and there's metformin. Those two are the most basic ones. And there's a lot of oral medications too. And nowadays there's the injection ones that also help with diabetes. So there's always new meds. Is there any particular medication that you've heard that you had a question on?
Well, I'm a diabetic.
So, well, I don't know if everyone heard, but what this gentleman is addressing is the fact that medications have a lot of side effects, and sometimes those side effects could be worse than the diabetes itself. It's true, but also you have to remember that having good diabetes control is very important to prevent stroke, kidney failure, limb amputation down the line. The thing, you don't have any symptoms, especially in early stage, and you can go on for 5, 10, 15 years without any symptoms, but then gradually all your organs are deteriorating. And by the time you want to you have symptoms and you want to fix it, it might actually be too late. So that's why we recommend, for people to have good control of diabetes and, see their regular doctor at least, 3-4 times a year just to have their blood sugars measured. Okay. Next question is, does diabetes affect your heels because a person is having a hard time putting weight on them? Diabetes, if your diabetes has been progressing, you develop something called neuropathy, which means that your nerves are damaged. And when your nerves are damaged, you don't have much sensation, you become numb. Also, some neuropathy symptoms could be burning, pinprick sensation, or feeling really cold. So those are all changes that can happen with poorly controlled diabetes. And in fact, there is a certain condition called Charcot's foot, and what it is that because your nerves are damaged for a long time and you don't have much feeling, much pain, you walk in a funnier way. The way your foot is built is to walk in a certain pattern, and you don't walk that way, you end up developing small little fractures. Okay, so that's something that could
Ph.D. because I fell asleep halfway through. Great. So even if I don't help you in life, maybe I'll just put you to sleep. Okay? So if you're having trouble with that and you want one of the CDs, please get one in the back.
What about when I have problems getting to sleep, but sometimes after I fall asleep, but I've slept for a while, I'll suddenly wake up and I feel as if I've slept all night, but when I check the time, it's only been an hour or two, and that keeps happening repeatedly through the whole night.
So what she's saying is she doesn't have trouble falling asleep, she has trouble staying asleep. And a lot of people have that issue, and part of that can be medical. I mean, sometimes people are getting up to go to the bathroom 2 or 3 times a night, and they wake up because they have to go to the bathroom, or they wake up because they're not feeling well. So if you think that part of your staying asleep issue might be a medical one, please talk to your doctor about that. I'm sitting here saying what perhaps you would be saying, right? But talk to Dr. Choi or talk to your physician about that, because there could be a medical reason of why you're not staying asleep that the doctor can really help you with. I think that if you will do regular sleep hygiene practices, over time you'll find that that will get better. But just like practicing the relaxation response, it requires doing the behaviors that work consistently over time. Like my slide said, find what works for you and stick with it. And what most people tell me is they found something that works, but they're not doing it. Relax an hour before bed and not to watch all those scary shows on TV. But I just couldn't help myself. I had to see that episode of whatever it is. I don't watch scary stuff, so I don't even know the names of them. But I've got pediatric patients who watch really scary stuff on movies and TV, and then they expect that they're supposed to go to sleep and stay asleep all night. Even the news can make you wake up in the middle of the night.
Sometimes I will put the TV on because I'll fall asleep watching TV, and then I get in bed and I can't sleep. Why is that?
One of the worst things you can do is fall asleep watching TV. That is not a good idea. And if you wake up in the middle of the night, one of the best things you can do is get up out of bed and go do something kind of mindless, like page through a magazine or something. Don't turn on the TV, because the light from the TV affects the brain in terms of waking you up. Don't turn on the computer, because the light from the computer affects your brain in terms of waking you up. It's better to just flip through a magazine, kind of mindless for a few minutes, then go back to bed and try to sleep again. Associate your... You can listen to the radio, sure, as long as it's not Dancing Queen. Okay? The important thing to do is associate your bed with rest and sleep and sex. Somebody asked me a sex question, which I'll get to in a minute, but the bed should be associated with those things. Don't pay bills in bed, don't watch TV in bed, don't worry in bed. I don't know how many of you do this. I've done it myself, where the best place to worry is when you put your head on the pillow in bed, and then boom, all the worries start. Computer in bed, not a good idea. Let bed be for sleep and rest. Or sex. Okay? And if you can't sleep, get up and get out of bed. Then you're telling the brain, okay, I guess I'm awake for a little while, so I won't be in bed. And the brain starts to associate sleep with the bed instead of sleep with all these other activities. So I hope that helps a little bit. Oh, and since we were talking about sex, what part does sex play in stress management? This is a very interesting question. And just like one of my slides said, the only thing that you can control in life is how you approach it. Sex could be great for stress management, or it could cause stress, as we all know. Everybody in this room knows that. So, if you have a partner that you trust and a good relationship, maybe it can be very wonderful in terms of helping you relax. If you're in a relationship that isn't working very well and you guys are arguing about every little thing, or you're not trusting that person or whatever, it's not going to help you at all. So it depends on the nature of the relationship and the person that you're with, I would say. There's no one answer to that question, like, yeah, let's all go have sex tonight so we can have better diabetes control and better stress management control. I can't say that. I'm sorry. I can't say that. And maybe Dr. Choi has a medical answer to that question. I don't know.
I don't think I could beat that answer. Keep the blood sugar low. Will you be cured from diabetes, or is diabetes type 2 diabetes reversible? And the answer, I would say, is unfortunately I'll have to say no. There are some exceptions. Exceptions definitely. Because of that diabetes, it occurs in people who have the genetic background already, like I mentioned. You already have the genes, the DNA that makes you a little bit more predisposed of developing diabetes. So you're always going to have that, that higher probability of becoming full-blown diabetic. And so there are people who, they were really obese, and then because of the diagnosis of diabetes, they lost large amount of weight, and their blood sugar returns to normal. So at that stage, we call it, diet, lifestyle, controlled diabetes. But we don't call it cure of diabetes. It's just different terminology. So definitely I highly encourage everyone, all the patients, to exercise and eat right, because you can really reverse it and live in a way that you don't have any of the effects of the diabetes, but you can never be quote unquote called cure from diabetes. So that's the answer to that. And another question is, how much does insomnia affect cortisol level? It affects a lot in terms of, there's no real pinpoint number that I can tell you affects 2 times higher or 3 times higher, because everyone's cortisol level varies depending on each individual. But like I said, instead of having that nice circadian rhythm of cortisol, when you're stressed or with insomnia, your sleep pattern changes and your whole cortisol level changes. So people who work in graveyard shifts, their cortisol level is completely out of whack as well. So they really go hand in hand. So it does affect a lot. But in terms of actual quantitative numbers, I don't have a specific number. Yes? any supplements to control cortisol? There's a lot of stuff out there that says, oh, it's good for adrenal health, and it's good for controlling stress, supplements, but there really isn't anything that really helps to bring down the stress level or the cortisol level. Yeah. I think maybe it might be more of a placebo effect. So a placebo effect also helps, so yes.
I think we have our final question of the night here, Dr. Choi.
Does resistance training and muscle building help with diabetes? Absolutely, it does. It does 100%. Because when you're doing resistance training, you're building your muscle. You're building your lean muscle as well as the skeletal muscle. And so what ends up happening, all that extra energy that we had stored in the form of fat tissue or adipose tissue gets converted, gets processed again and converted into building the muscles. So it definitely helps a lot and helps to reduce the amount of, the abdominal fat or the visceral fat. And so that really helps lowering the blood sugars. Yes.
I'd like to thank Dr. Randi McAllister and Dr. Jinsun Choi for coming out tonight.
Thank you so much.
And I'd also like to say a final thanks to thanks to our vendors who made time to come out this evening as well. If we can give them a round of applause. I'd like to also thank each and every one of you for coming out, and if we could have you fill out the yellow sheets for our surveys, we greatly would appreciate that. Thank you so much for coming out tonight for Diabetes Ask the Experts.